What is up, Fins fans? Welcome back to the Fins Up podcast. I'm your host, Graydon. We got a lot to cover today. Dolphins had the Cleveland Browns come down to Miami. We dominated them 39-17. Hell of a football game. There's a lot to dive into. And for a rare change of pace, we're going to go ahead and say that there's not a lot of negatives to dive into today. I'm not saying the Dolphins played a perfect football game. I don't know that that's ever going to be something that you see happen. But this was definitely the first game to me where we saw the Dolphins come together on all three phases of the game. The offense looked great. The defense started off looking a little bit rocky. You kind of got nervous, like, boy, here we go again. And then they got it together. Obviously, you only held the Browns to 17 points. Not a bad football game at all. On the defensive side of the ball, especially with the league's third leading rushing game coming in, you only gave up 112 rushing yards to them. Not bad at all. They were coming in, I want to say, averaging about 160 a game. So, I mean, we talked about last week how the run defense played really well against the Bears running backs. It was just Justin Fields that carved us up, which obviously you're not going to see a lot of that from Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett did get, I think, 5 rushes for 20 yards in the game. Most of that was on one third down run. But let's dive into this game. Like always, we're going to try to go chronological here. Starting at the beginning, the Browns come out, drive down the field. Really good looking, great drive. Jacoby Brissett looks good. They honestly, I mean, like we just covered, they didn't get us a lot on the ground. The run defense played great, but again, the pass defense didn't look good. And I understand that the Dolphins secondary still isn't healthy. You can make up some excuses for these guys, but at the end of the day, we're playing Jacoby Brissett. And as Dolphins fans, we all know what the limitations of Jacoby Brissett are. It's not the worst backup quarterback in the league by any stretch of the imagination. There's a reason that the Dolphins gave him the contract that they did last year and that the Browns gave him the contract that they did this year, knowing that they weren't going to see their starting quarterback for an unassumed amount of time, which now we know is going to be 11 weeks. But he came out looking really good in the beginning, and you kind of thought, oh boy, here we go. This defense is going to look like trash again. And then you had the Nick Chubb fumble, and that, to me, in my opinion, was when the momentum completely changed. The Dolphins offense played great the whole way through. Tua comes out 5 for 5, throws a tud on the first drive to Alec Ingold. It's kind of been a lot of what we've seen already to this point, where no complaints with Tua's game, no complaints with the offensive side. It's just a matter of, is this going to be another freaking shootout? Which it didn't turn into that at all. Jacoby Brissett didn't have a terrible game. We didn't get any takeaways as far as interceptions or anything like that. It was just the one Nick Chubb fumble during the game, especially in the second half when the lead started to blow up more and more for Miami. Obviously, there was a lot of turnover on downs on fourth down. On the offensive side of the ball, the interesting thing here for me was it was the first game where we saw that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle didn't just absolutely dominate the game. Were they good? Yeah, of course they were good. But I mean, in terms of the games that we're used to, Waddle had 4 catches for 66 yards, no touchdowns. Tyreek had 5 catches for just 44 yards, which is even crazier because you think of Tyreek averaging anything less than 5 yards a touch. That in and of itself is pretty crazy. He did get the touchdown, which obviously that's great, but he only averaged 8.8 yards a catch, which is, I haven't looked at it, but I would go out on a limb and feel free to assume that that's a season low. So that being said, the positive side of this is 2 things. One, we saw what it looked like when we play against a team that comes in with a good defensive strategy and shuts down your 2 best weapons and forces you to take what's underneath, take what's on the check down to the outside. And there's 2 major positives of this. One is the fact that Tua played it well. Didn't continue to try to force the ball to those guys and get turnovers, give up a bunch of PBUs. They forced him to play inside their game, and Tua took what the defense gave him. The other aspect of that is this is by far the best rushing game that the Dolphins had. I mean, they finished the game with 195 rushing yards in a game where you put up 39 points, and Tua still finished with 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. So it's not like it was one of those games where you didn't have a passing game going, so you just ran the ball. Like, no, Tua was still there all day. They just managed to get both sides of the ball going. And it comes back to what we said at the beginning of the show with the Dolphins playing complementary football. That's what this allows you to do. You can afford to go out and run the ball, and then that opens up the passing game. And you went against, in this case, Deion Jones is really the better of the coverage linebackers that the Browns have right now, with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah missing time with an injury. If you would have had both those guys, the middle of the field would have been even more shut down, in my opinion, just because that's 2 of the best coverage linebackers in the league. I mean, JOK is really more of a guy that is a hybrid linebacker / safety. And so he has the ability to go out there and keep up with guys over the middle of the field. And I think that if I had to guess what was going on in Cleveland's film rooms coming into the game on the defensive side of the ball, they said we're going to take away the middle of the field. And we saw some of that. We saw Tua try to stretch the field on the outside. Great play by Denzel Ward breaking up a long ball that was right where it should have been to Tyreek Hill. It wasn't underthrown at all. Perfectly hit him in stride before the safety could get there, but just a hell of a play by Denzel Ward. So he tried to open up things outside, but it was a lot of just take what the defense gives you and continuing to show just the keyhole accuracy that Tua has, whether it be on an out route, the few crossing routes that we did manage to connect on over the middle, just putting the ball right where his guy can get it, and the defender, even though the coverage was really good, a perfect pass and a good catch beats perfect defense every time. There's just not much you can do. Even on the touchdown ball to Trent Sherfield, I mean, just a dime. It wasn't bad coverage. I don't know if that DB was in position necessarily to get his head around and make a play on the ball, but it wasn't bad coverage. He was sure as hell there to make a play. And with where Tua put the ball, no, never a chance. And the other part that I did want to bring up on this is it's the first time we've got to see Skylar Thompson come in garbage time in the fourth quarter, and not because of an injury, but just because game's over, get Tua out, keep him healthy. We go into the bye, get some rest, let him come back in and whoop up on the Texans here in a couple weeks. I mean, in terms of negative stuff in this game, it honestly is hard to find. It was just a very complete football game from the Dolphins. The one thing that I will say, going into the half, right around the 2-minute warning. We gave the ball back to the Browns right around the 2-minute warning. You had a third and one, followed by a fourth and inches that we went for. The 3rd and 1 play call was the let's act all confused, have Durham Smythe come in under center, take the direct snap, try to push it forward the yard to get the first down. What I didn't like on that play is it was a long 3rd and 1. So it was, a full yard or maybe even a little bit more. It wasn't one of those we just need a little bit of push. That's a long ways to try to get on a direct snap play. I don't mind the idea. I like if because that's basically a substitute of a quarterback sneak with a little bit of dressing on it. But I like the concept because I spoke to you guys earlier in the year on the quarterback sneak that we saw Tua do against the Bills, which according to him, obviously this turned into a big old friggin' drama fest. But according to him, that led to his back injury was him doing the quarterback sneak. And I haven't once liked the way a quarterback sneak looked for Tua. So rather than putting Tua up under center, you put Durham Smythe in. I like that part of the play. What I don't like is the down and distance. It was almost like you flipped the two play calls. You went with the direct snap to Durham Smythe on the long 3rd and 1, and then you switched to a traditional run play on 4th and inches. If you would have flipped that, given it to Jeff Wilson on 3rd and 1, try to get a push up front, see if he can push through the line, and then gone direct snap on inches because you just need to get that little bit and just get off the ball. That would have been a sequence that I liked better than the play call that was brought up. And the other part of that is you have a quarterback that, I mean, at this point, Josh Allen played terrible again today, blew that game against the Vikings. And with that being said, Tua is right up there with Patrick Mahomes in terms of MVP conversation. And you don't give him the ball on 3rd and 1, and then you don't give him the ball again on 4th and inches. Again, I'm not saying to sneak it, and that doesn't say anything about Tua's skill. He just doesn't have the body type where I think that's a position that you put him in to be successful. But put him in his hands and do whatever you want. An extension of the run game, whether that be a screen pass to Tyreek Hill, a screen pass to Jalen Waddle, something quick over the middle. Any sort of the motion that you use out of the backfield, maybe give it another one of the plays to Alec Ingold scraping along the backside. Whatever you want to do, there's no debate about Mike McDaniel's ability as a play architect. It's just that every now and then the play call is just confusing. The other side of that I will say on a positive note is at the end of the game, my concern was very with, okay, let's not let off the throttle here. Let the Browns find a way back in this. Let's keep the pedal down, keep playing your offense, and play like you want to win this game. And that's what we did to blow up this lead to 39-17. Even though you're up by 2 possessions, you didn't let off. Next negative part of the game has to be Jason Sanders. 2 missed extra points. He was good on the 1 field goal attempt, which obviously 2 field goal attempts rather, which is obviously much more important than extra points as far as points on the board goes. But we talked about last week how I tried to stay off the Jason Sanders hate for a long time. and tried to be patient with him. I understand the mental side of the game. I don't believe that this is a situation in which he's just forgotten how to kick. I think it has to be very mental. And I don't know what you do at this point. At first, my thought was wait till the end of the season. His contract's structured in a way that you can get out of this deal at the end of the year, and then worry about this offseason, what direction you go to in terms of kickers. At this point, I don't know. If we're going into a playoff game or if we're going into some of these rough games against Buffalo or the Ravens or Tennessee, I haven't looked. I know after this game we're the 2 seed in terms of playoff. If the season were to end right now, I'm not sure who our lineup is in terms of playoffs right now. But if you're going to go into the playoffs right now and play one of these rough teams where every point counts, every potential kick counts, if you don't have the confidence to go in and kick an extra point at home in Miami in nice weather, what happens when you're in Buffalo and it's snowing outside or Baltimore and it's freezing? It's not confidence inducing to see him go out and miss extra points. Especially it'd be one thing if it was a fluke deal and it was like, hey, he's been great all year, he missed an extra point, whatever. But he hasn't made a field goal over 50 yards yet this year, and now you're missing extra points. It's trending more in the wrong direction rather than him starting to get better and better. It's only getting worse. And I don't know where you go from here other than like I said, a midseason change. The next thing to dive into here is again, we talked about how it feels really wrong to say this was the worst games from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but I guess let's just keep it a buck. That's the truth. It was. It's just that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad games. I mean, Waddle still only almost had 70 yards on 4 catches. But one thing that I did really like was Trent Sherfield's involvement, 4 catches for 63 yards. He's right up there with Waddle, and he had a touchdown. We've talked about before over the last few weeks on how I love seeing Trent Sherfield get involved because he does so many little things. He's such a grinder, such a team player in this offense that I love seeing him get the chance to get involved and continue to make plays. Listen, bro, I do have to bring it up though. Like, you got involved, you make a big play, and then you take a 15-yard taunting penalty. Come on, Doc. We gotta clean that up. You don't get, I get it. You're stoked. You got your chance, but act like we've been there before, man. The run game, the run game, the run game. I don't. McDaniel talked about before the game with reporters about how right now this is a very pass heavy offense. And he thinks that you can see this offense getting more and more toward being a 50-50 split offense. We saw that today. I'm not sure exactly what the splits were. I don't have what run plays versus pass plays pulled up, but it had to be close to 50-50. And the more you got that run game involved, you dominated time of possession 33 minutes to 26 minutes. This is the type of stuff where if you can do this, that's what opens up your ability to where you can go into Buffalo and play in the cold if you can run the football. You know, we have yet to see how proven Tua is this year playing in cold weather. Obviously, it's very easy to be like, well, if Tua has played this good, which is just leaps and bounds ahead of year 2 or year 1, you can only assume that the same thing would hold true in cold weather. I'm not one for assuming. I want you to prove it to me. I want to see it first, then I'll believe it. But if you have a run game that comes in like this, where you're ripping off close to 7 yards of play, I mean, Jeff Wilson ended up with 17 carries for 119 yards. That's 7 yards a carry. Raheem Mostert, 8 carries for 65 yards. That's 8 yards a carry. You can't ask for much more. But a touchdown each, both of which getting relatively involved in the passing game too. Jeff Wilson had 2 catches for 24 yards. Mostert, 4 catches for 22 yards. It's just looking like a complete football team. And this is the same Browns defense that really shut down Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And to me, at this point, that's the most right comparison for this team. The 2021 Bengals versus the 2022 Dolphins. Do I think this Dolphins team has the potential to be better than that Bengals team that went to the Super Bowl? Absolutely. Like, I think Jamar Chase, hell of a player. Tyreek Hill's better. T. Higgins, hell of a player. Jalen Waddle's better. Tua is playing better than what Joe Burrow played last year. Joe Mixon, yeah. But I mean, Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, you give me the dueling pair versus the one guy, I'll take it. And then obviously there's the whole defensive side of the ball. Speaking of the defensive side of the ball, let's dive into that. Actually, before we do that, we got to talk about this offensive line. Myles Garrett, best pass rush win rate coming into the game in the entire league. And watching the game, I didn't know he played for the Browns. I thought he was on vacation or something. Like he wasn't even there. And obviously a huge part of that credit goes to Teron Armstead, but Teron Armstead doesn't deserve all the credit. Um, Offensive line plays as a unit. Myles Garrett finished the game with one tackle, not a sack, just one tackle. They got credited a sack on the play that was the high snap to Tua that he jumped up, swatted it straight up, and then just dove on the ball. That got credited as a sack. It wasn't the Myles Garrett, but in the box score it shows that as one sack allowed. You could, I mean, maybe you could credit that to Connor Williams on the high snap, but pretty finicky, pretty picky there. It's not something that I'm going to go out on a limb for, but it was there if you want to count it. That being said, back to the defensive side of the ball. Nick Chubb finished the game for 11 carries for 63 yards for 5.7 yards carry. The majority of that was on 133-yard rush for a touchdown. You take that out, you're down to 10 carries for 30 yards for 3 yards a carry. Obviously, we don't get to play that game. We don't get to just take that play out. But the point is, great run defense all game long. And it continues to show that this defense plays really well against the run as long as it's typical run, not Justin Fields, not Lamar Jackson. Jacoby Brissett even had 7 carries for 40 yards in this game. I know I mentioned 20 yards earlier. There was 2 more carries there. I forgot at the end of the game where he ripped off another couple big chunks. And Jacoby Brissett, let's be honest, not the most athletic of quarterbacks. So it's just something to keep an eye on. I feel like it's a 50-50 deal where it's like, yeah, you can blame the defense. Like, why did you give up 40 yards to Jacoby Brissett? Like, yeah, you can say that. But at the same time, it was garbage time at the end of the game for the majority of that. And it's not something you game plan for. You're not game planning for, hey, we have to have somebody spying, somebody keeping an eye on Jacoby Brissett. It's like, no, not really a guy we should have to worry about. And then you get burned. And luckily in this case, it was garbage time. It doesn't really matter. That being said, Donovan Peoples-Jones led the Browns in receiving for 5 catches for 99 yards. Amari Cooper, way better than I thought it was going to turn out. Only 3 catches for 32 yards. It was looking like early on, I was like, whoa. It seems like every time they want to go to Amari with X on him, he's getting a catch. It didn't turn out that bad. One thing that I do want to bring up is an exit. Like, you look at the box score against Amari Cooper, that's a damn good game. X played relatively well. But I'm starting to wonder, we're 10 games deep on the season now, and X has no takeaways. And obviously, X hasn't played anywhere near the level of play as what we're used to. Can you attribute part of that to the fact that Byron Jones isn't there and that Nick Needham isn't there and that he doesn't have the same amount of help in the secondary? I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of guys say that, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't get it. Like, what does the corner across from you in man coverage playing their guy have to do with you playing man coverage with your guys? I mean, I get it to a certain extent as far as then you want to talk about interceptions, then the defense has to choose. Do I force it to Byron Jones, who's in really good coverage but doesn't catch the ball very often? Or do I take the risk and force it to X, who at least, every now and then gives up a completion, but also has the risk of taking the ball away? You have to choose. I can say some of that, but for the most part, you giving up catches has nothing to do with who's on the other side. Like if anything, it should almost be the opposite because they should be more willing to target other wide receivers, knowing that there isn't an elite corner on them. They shouldn't be. They should be, hey, X is out there. This other guy is Kader Kohu, a UDFA. Yeah, he's had a good season, but he's still a rookie. We can do these types of pick plays, these type of tricks to get him open opportunities. Let's pick on Kader Kohu and just leave X out of this. You would think to me, if you're playing at an elite level, that's what the conversations look like inside the offensive meeting room. Hasn't been the case this year. So my question is with that, is this X playing through injuries and just kind of being off by just a step? Again, he didn't play terrible in this game. I'm not trying to hate on X, but just going into the bye week, we got to start with some of these conversations. Or is it the fact that he's getting close to that 30 age where corners start to jump over that hill and then start to curve downhill into the twilight of their career? I don't know. I hope that's not the case. But all I'm saying is based off the play that we've seen so far, it begs the question. So just something to keep an eye on moving forward. I don't really think that there's much to cover left in this game. I mean, Thomas Morstead didn't even see the field. He's now punted once in the last 2 weeks. That's wild. We're now moving into the bye. Didn't do terrible on penalties today. Only 5 penalties for 43 yards. The Browns had 6 for 52. Third down efficiency, we completed about 50% of our third downs. 1 for 2 on fourth down. We got 3 sacks. I did enjoy seeing that. You're starting to see Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips heat up, as well as the fact that the presence of them is going to open things up for Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer inside. So you did see Christian Wilkins get in there for a sack. Bradley Chubb had half. Melvin Ingram had a sack, and Jalen Phillips had the other half. So let those guys continue to work on chemistry. Let them continue to heat up. The Browns have one of the best offensive lines in the league. So if you're getting 3 sacks against them, granted with a statue of a quarterback, more or less than Jacoby Brissett, really hard guy to take down, but he's not super mobile. So we'll have the bye. We'll come back against the Texans. Another pocket passer for the most part in Davis Mills. You got Laramie Tunsil, who's obviously still one of the best left tackles in the league. Other than that, that offensive line isn't a great unit. So I'd look for more pass rush capabilities, or not capabilities, more pass rush opportunities going into that game. Could continue to open things up. We're going to the bye at 7-3. And Tua is, like I said, on my book, you got to include Jalen Hurts in there. That's what I'm freak. I guess you got to I would put Tua at number 3 behind Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes in terms of MVP odds. I guess you can't say voting. In terms of MVP odds, there's a lot to be excited about as a Dolphins fan. And again, in this game, you saw it all come together. Was there a little bit of poor wrap-up tackling? Like, yeah, the one play that Nick Chubb went for 33 yards, Verone McKinley, who did get signed to the roster this week, had the chance to make the play, had a big hit on him the play before, went for another big hit going low on him. That's a guy you got to wrap up. A hell of a hit on the play before. It doesn't matter. Like Derrick Henry, who's probably the hardest hitting guy in the league. Every now and then he's going to get knocked off his feet. You did it the play before on him. You need to wrap up Nick Chubb, or that you're going to get burned. You play with fire every now and then, you're going to get burned. But other than that, the tackling looked good. I mean, Jerome Baker was out there filling holes in the running game. The run defense continues to look good. Cater Kohu, I bring him up every week on this podcast as somebody who just plays out of his mind for UDFA. One guy that does deserve a lot of love. It seemed like the Browns' last drive, it was Justin Bethel. Just perfect coverage. Did he get his head around to see the ball every time? No, but he was patient, didn't get the PI call, waited till the ball arrived, then punched it out. Like 3 times on that last drive. So you got to give him some love. This is a team that you can tell is just excited to play for Mike McDaniel. And they're excited to go out there and get dubs. So we're 7-3 going to the bye. I'm going to predict a win over the Texans. That puts us 8-3. The Dolphins are now number 1 in the AFC East on top, the number 2 seed in the AFC as a whole. If you weren't thinking playoffs before, you got to be thinking playoffs now. This is the best start, 7-3 of the first 10 games. This is the best start Miami's had since 2001. Buckle up. It's going to be a hell of a ride. Other than that, if you guys are watching on YouTube, do me a favor, leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you liked about it. Let me know what you didn't like. If you're listening on a podcast, do me a favor, leave a rating and review. You guys know the rules. Whatever you think the podcast deserves, that's what I would like you to leave for a review. Other than that, if you want to follow me on Twitter at FinsUpPodcast, follow me personally at FiskGraydon. And other than that, if you like the podcast, be a friend, tell a friend. Other than that, I hope you guys have a good week. Stay safe out there. Fins up.